Tonight, new controversy surrounding Hillary Clinton and the ongoing investigation into her emails. A look at an updated path to 270 since FBI Director James Comey's letter to Congress, and a breakdown of the latest argument being heard by the Supreme Court. This is Talking Points. Welcome to the November 3rd edition of Talking Points. I'm your host, Alex Amico. Tonight we begin with the latest on the Clinton email scandal. Last Friday, FBI Director James Comey shook up the presidential race by sending a letter to 8 Senate and House chairmen. That letter stated that the FBI is again investigating Hillary Clinton for her use of a private email server during her tenure as Secretary of State. Comey and the FBI closed this investigation in July, but an ongoing investigation into former New York Congressman Anthony Weiner revealed that there were emails said to have gone through Clinton's server. Weiner is the estranged husband of top Clinton aide Huma Abedin. And when the FBI was going through Weiner's laptop, Abedin's emails were also discovered. Comey was briefed last Thursday on this, and the next day sent a letter notifying Congress of the investigation. Clinton held a press conference later Friday evening to address the investigation.
Deserve to get full and complete facts. And so we've called on Director Comey to explain everything right away, put it all out on the table.
To discuss the potential political fallout from the announcement, we're joined by Talking Points contributor Paul Dwyer. Paul, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So the reactions come pretty swiftly from both campaigns. How are they handling this?
So as you saw in that clip right there, Clinton came out later that evening, Friday evening, and went on the offensive, called for Comey and the FBI to release all relevant information. But that's knowing that they can't at this moment because they're still going through this investigation. It's going to take a while. But Democrats followed suit. Harry Reid, Senate Minority Leader, sent a letter to Comey, basically scathing him for doing this, saying it was political, saying he actually violated the Hatch Act, and also saying that he didn't mention that the investigation into Paul Manafort, Trump's former campaign manager, was not released publicly. So there's a lot of attack from the Democrats, and Republicans, on the other hand, they're just completely spewing this message, just over and over, repeating it. Trump stayed on message. And they're really getting the message across about her and her untrustworthiness. So
there's been quite a few scandals in this election. The email scandal back in July, Donald Trump's various scandals. Why is this one different, and what is the timing? What kind of effect can the timing have on the election?
To go back about a month when the Access Hollywood tapes were released, that completely sunk Trump in the polls. Everyone was saying that he's got no shot, everything. Over the last few weeks, Trump has gone up a little bit, but it's more of just been just him, polls coming together. This changes the election. It's not going to put Trump in a position where he's favored to win. Hillary Clinton is favored still in 538. She's got a 65% chance to win the election. But going into election night, Trump actually has a chance. Although she's heavily favored, Trump has a chance. In the battleground states, it's coming a little bit closer. So some of them within the margin of error, Trump has to turn one blue state red. But it's instead of a potential landslide, it's looking more like it'll be relatively close.
We'll see what happens. Paul Dwyer, thank you so much. Coming up after the break, more than $2 billion combined has been spent on the presidential campaigns. But where does all this money come from? We'll break it down when we come back.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, we mobbing. Come on, girl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning. Why?
Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you get stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit.
I forgot. I'll do better. Please, don't quit on me.
Okay, but remember, It's not what you say, it's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
As the campaign is drawing to a close, the candidates are spending as much as they have to make their final push with voters. Understanding where that money is coming from and where it is going is critical in diagnosing which areas are deemed most important. Here to tell us some more about the strategies of this cycle is Talking Points political correspondent Josh Carney. Josh, thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much.
So let's start with some nuts and bolts. How expensive has this campaign been?
There has been $1.3 billion raised by candidates and over $545 million raised by super PACs. Collectively, they're projecting over $2.1 billion, according to the Center for Responsive Politics. It has been the most expensive campaign on record. It is going to incredible ad buys, a huge amount of administration fees, and it is ultimately culminating in what is going to be a comprehensively $3 billion excess campaign.
So it's a very expensive campaign. Both candidates are spending a lot, but it's not exactly symmetrical. Can you tell us a little about the difference in the strategies behind the spending?
No, and Trump is spending aggressively right now, but hasn't really been able to outpace Clinton until this week. On record, she was spending about $9.1 billion to his $3.3 for every single week up until the past 3 weeks. Now he is currently outpacing her with $14.4 million and to $13.9 million just last week. And we can see that they are targeting specific states. We look at the battleground states of Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, with major ad buys as they're trying to swing final voters.
So what sort of difference is there in the location between the candidates? Are they both spending in the same places? Are some of them kind of writing off states? How are they differing in their strategy with location?
Well, we've seen some pretty substantial moves that we haven't seen before, where Clinton is attacking distinctly red states, where she's going after Arizona ad buys, even $100,000 this past week in Texas. But we can also see Trump is anteing up in states where he needs a lot more pressure. He's outpacing her 27% to 23% of his total spending in Florida alone. And Clinton has projected to put $80 million into the battleground states of Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, and Arizona just through the final push this week.
So campaign finance is a pretty hot button issue. One of the big rallying cries for Bernie Sanders was a corrupt campaign finance system. He said his litmus test for Supreme Court judges would be, would they overturn Citizens United? What sort of problems come with what we've seen in this campaign finance?
Well, the problems is that the candidates only really focus on highly populated areas where they're not getting out the message or necessarily focusing on the same values and issues that would affect somebody in Montana versus New York City. So it creates this drastic paradigm of where certain states are more important than others, certain people's opinions are more important than others, and that's what's the actual institutional divide. The fiscal divide is that only certain states are getting certain money and certain attention, which means that there is a stark focus on these East Coast battleground states as opposed to the middle of the country, and it makes you think, are certain people getting forgotten about in this race?
Josh Carney, as always, thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex.
This is it. With 5 days until the election, the race has tightened yet again. Trump has closed the gap, and Democrats are left wondering how they went from having a chance in Texas a week ago to hoping that New Hampshire doesn't flip. This week has been an interesting one, and that probably won't change over the next 5 days. Here to give us one final look at the road to 270 is Talking Points election correspondent Dan Prager. Dan, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, like I said, last week it looked like Hillary Clinton was headed for possibly breaking 400 electoral votes. Now her campaign is scrambling to shore up her firewall. Where does the campaign stand right now?
Well, right now, if you look at an election map, Clinton has lost most of her firewall. She had chances in Arizona, Florida, and North Carolina, looked pretty safe. But now the firewall comes to 6 states, and she's still got that 270 that she needs to win. But these 6 states, Colorado, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and New Hampshire, are states that are coming really close. They're within 3 to 4 points of the polls. Before today, where in New Hampshire there was a poll that showed Trump up 5, none of them had a poll showing Trump up since September. So all of those states are decidedly leaning blue, but right now any of them could necessarily flip if the polls continue in Trump's direction.
So that's where Clinton's firewall stands. How does Trump win? How does he break that firewall?
Well, the easiest way for Trump to win is winning all of those swing states, the states in gray, which are Nevada, North Carolina, and Florida. If he wins those 3, he just has to pull one of those states, let's say New Hampshire. The problem is, right now with Nevada, early voting is showing that Clinton's got a pretty big advantage. Not as much as Obama had with his 7-point win in 2012, but enough that she
And
probably is going to win.
And Nevada's a big early voting state.
It is. There's about 60% of the vote going there. So if she wins Nevada, she has to win one of the bigger states, not New Hampshire, to win. But then you have to look at what if Clinton wins North Carolina, where she's got a slight advantage, but still an advantage. If that happens, she has to win. Trump has to win, let's say, New Hampshire, Colorado, and Wisconsin, really to take that lead. And if she takes Florida, he can take all 3 of those states and not get it. So it's really hard for him if he doesn't win Florida.
Now let's put on our political junkie fantasy hat right now. 140 years ago this year, the House of Representatives decided the election between Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel J. Tilden after it tied and no one got a majority in the Electoral College. What are the chances of that happening this year? How can it happen? And what'll happen next if that happens?
There's actually a couple of ways for it to happen. It's not very likely, but there are 3 real ways where it can happen. The first is if Trump wins New Hampshire, Florida, and Pennsylvania, and Clinton picks up Nevada and North Carolina. The second is Trump wins Colorado and North Carolina, and Clinton wins Nevada. Both of those result in a 269 to 269 tie. There is another one, my favorite, where Evan McMullen pulls Utah, and any scenario where their states are too close, it turns into neither candidate gets 270. So what happens then is it goes to the House of Representatives. Each state gets 1 vote, and the House gets to vote on who they want for a candidate. It can only be people who scored an electoral vote. So let's say McMullen doesn't get Utah, he doesn't factor into this. So right now there are more red states than blue states, so Clinton would have to swing those states. Now, if she won the popular vote but not the Electoral College vote, it gets really interesting because you don't know what's going to happen there.
Well, we're limping to the finish line, Dan.
Sure.
Let's see if it's a long limp or a short one. Thank you very much. On the other side of the break, the latest on escalating tensions in Standing Rock. Stay with us.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for information on how to provide even better care for the person who wants to care of you.
There's one thing you can never have sex without.
It's not something you buy.
Or something you take.
In fact, there's only one way to get it.
It has to be given to you, freely.
It's consent.
Because sex without it isn't sex.
It's rape. Consent.
If you don't get it, you don't get it.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Welcome back. Once again, the Dakota Access Pipeline is making headlines. The once peaceful protests turned violent last week. Since the protest began, a camp near Cannonball, North Dakota, has served as a staging ground for the protests. The violence was sparked when some protesters attempted to create a second camp on private land in the path of the pipeline. They were met by riot police using pepper spray, rubber bullets, and noise cannons. 141 people were arrested. Some of the protesters responded by lighting fires and throwing Molotov cocktails. Here to break down the protest is Talking Points contributor Joey Lino. Joey, thank you for joining us. So one thing that we saw this week was a lot of people on Facebook checking in at Standing Rock, North Dakota. At first I thought that some of my friends might have traveled there, but pretty quickly I realized that not all of them could have gone. What was up with all that?
Well, yeah, not everyone went on vacation to North Dakota this week. A lot of people were under the impression that the police were using Standing Rock Facebook check-ins by protesters to arrest them. And so people were under the impression they were disrupting police activity by checking in at Standing Rock. There was no actual evidence to back this up. However, it did turn into a good show of solidarity around the country for the protesters.
So this is an issue that has been notably left out of the campaign trail. Why haven't either of the candidates talked about this?
Well, Donald Trump, while he hasn't said anything, it's not too hard to guess where his allegiance lies with this pipeline. He has received $100,000 in campaign donations from the CEO of Energy Transfer Partners, the company building the pipeline, and he himself has somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million invested in the company. So I would bet he wants to see it go through. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, is sort of caught between a rock and a hard place. She has a lot of her base who is vehemently opposed to the pipeline, while she has many unions endorsing her who think the pipeline will bring in jobs and are heavily for it.
So oil needs to be transported some way. This pipeline is receiving a lot of protests If we don't move it via pipeline, how else is it going to get moved, and what are some of the problems with it?
Well, yeah, see, this is where it gets a little interesting, because if oil is going to get shipped either way, and if they don't use this pipeline, rail is the next option, and rail is actually more expensive, worse for the environment, and more dangerous to use to ship than pipelines.
And President Obama weighed in on this earlier this week. What did he have to say about it?
Well, President Obama has said that rerouting the pipeline is actually still on the table, the potential for the Army Corps of Engineers to move it so that it doesn't potentially impact the water supply of the Standing Rock Sioux. That's still an option that they're considering. However, many experts are worried that at this stage in the development of the project, that would be too much of a hurdle to overcome.
Joey Lino, thank you for joining us. The Supreme Court is weighing in on transgender rights for the first time. The Supreme Court announced Friday that it will hear arguments for a case regarding transgender students' rights to use the bathroom that corresponds with their chosen gender. The case involves Virginia high school student Gavin Grimm, who was born female but identifies as male. The school let Gavin use the male bathroom but changed its mind after getting complaints from other students' parents. The school board now requires students to use the bathroom that corresponds with their assigned gender at birth. Gavin says this violates his rights. Talking Point's national correspondent Sarah Nevin is here to discuss the case and what impact it may have on the transgender community. Thank you for joining me.
No problem.
So we've seen quite a few of these laws pop up in different states. North Carolina is where it's been most high profile. Right. There have been a lot of businesses revolting against that. Why was this case the one that made it to the Supreme Court?
Yeah, so following the school board's decision, Gavin decided to sue them, and in April, a lower court ruled in his favor, deferring to a recent Department of Education and Obama administration directive that states that the Title IX's ban on sexual discrimination in public schools extends to gender identity, and so any restriction is a violation to that student's rights. And then this summer, the Supreme Court voted for a temporary stay on that decision after an appeal by the school board, and the school board states that the Department of Education basically overstated its authority with this interpretation of the Title IX law.
And so if the court were to rule in favor of Gavin and let him use the bathroom of his gender identity, what impact would that have?
So the decision would be used to decide similar cases throughout the country. So currently 23 states in red on the map are suing the Obama administration, challenging the Department of Education's interpretation of the Title IX law without judicial review. And so if the court rules in Gavin's favor, that lawsuit basically becomes obsolete, and it'll also set a nationwide precedent on how public schools have to treat transgender students, and it will also challenge those state laws like we see in North Carolina.
And so right now the court is divided 4-4. There have been some senators that have said they will not consider any Hillary Clinton nominee if she is to be elected president. If that 9th seat isn't filled by June, what kind of impact could that actually have on this case?
So if the court were to rule 4-4, then the lower court's decision would stand, and so Gavin would be able to use the bathroom of his choice and locker room of his choice, and all school districts located in that circuit would have to abide by that ruling. But it wouldn't set a national precedent on the protection of transgender rights. It'll also give strength to those states that are that have those state laws that ban people from using the bathroom of their choice, and it may open the door for more states and schools to pass these kind of laws.
Sarah Nevin, thank you for joining us. When we come back, a closer look at Turkey, where thousands of journalists are being arrested. Don't go anywhere.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice, single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Well, Thomas, you've got prediabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have prediabetes. Big time.
Refugees are now fleeing northern areas of France after the French government officially demolished the Calais camp this week. The camp was otherwise known as the jungle, as evidenced by the cramped tents, the police sweeps that involved tear gas, and the lack of food and basic necessities there for migrants. The French have tried to clear it out for over a year now, but as of Wednesday, the jungle is officially no more. Talking Points international correspondent Tom Austin tells us where the migrants will go and what it all means for France.
Yeah, that's right, Alex. The Calais camp that was taking in up to 80 refugees a day won't be welcoming anymore. As for the approximately 10,000 refugees that were staying in the camp, President Hollande says he'll disperse them throughout France, putting them in bunches of 40 or 60 in refugee centers around the country where they'll stay for 3 or 4 months. But it's been the subject of much controversy, though. Some French citizens are frustrated about the move, saying that dispersing migrants across the country doesn't provide any sort of solution to the migrant crisis. Many don't want any immigrants around them at all. Others worry about the children who are being cleared out, and many are unaccompanied, and some worry they're in imminent danger with people traffickers and violent gangs nearby. President Hollande is asking the UK to take in up to 1,500 unaccompanied minors as a result. The reasoning behind clearing out the camp was twofold, according to the French. In one sense, it was meant to make verifying migrant documents easier, and on the other side, it was to ensure more sanitary conditions for the refugees. As winter approaches, finding shelter and basic amenities will become even more difficult for refugees. And President Hollande finds himself in the middle of a re-election bid with extremely low approval ratings. So France is something to keep an eye on in the future. Alex?
Thank you, Tom. Following the attempted coup in Turkey this summer, over 110,000 state employees have been fired or detained in an ever-increasing crackdown by President Erdogan. This past weekend, he renewed that push, jailing 1,200 professors, closing 15 pro-Kurdish media groups, and jailing the editor-in-chief of the country's main opposition newspaper. And we just learned he also has begun jailing the leaders of and many parliament members of the country's main Kurdish opposition party. Talking Points international correspondent Elijah Shama is here to explain these arrests. Elijah, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with this bit of breaking news of the main Kurdish party, their leaders and many of their parliamentary members being arrested. Talk a little about that.
Right now we're seeing, BBC is reporting that the HDP leaders confirmed are the president of the party and the co-leader have been arrested by Turkish officials. This is Turkey's third largest political party. They're the largest Kurdish party in Turkish parliament, and they've largely been, Turkish government has tried to link them to the PKK and said that they really only represent Turkey's south minority of Kurds. But this is a stunning move in cracking down on really any political opposition.
Yeah, so President Erdogan, he's been pushing basically to consolidate his power and become more almost autocratic, even before the coup and then after the coup as well. Is this a new level? Is this like going beyond what he's already done?
This is definitely a new level. Right now what we're seeing is he is controlling academia, and there is virtually no political party that can stop him at this point. The AK party has complete and total domination of the Turkish parliament, and he now has the right to appoint all 120 university heads across the country.
So we've seen he's cracked down on academia, he's cracked down on media, and now we're seeing he's cracked down on actual political dissent. What's his next step?
His next step is really, we're looking at almost kind of a neo-fascist move. This man is creating kind of a cult of personality, and really it's going to be interesting to see whether this cult of personality leaves with him or if he's cementing something that will stay, if he's cementing kind of a military junta or something of that nature. But this man is making Turkey his.
And so it doesn't seem like that long ago that Turkey was actually in the running to become an EU member. What sort of effect have these recent moves had on that, and what sort of international reaction has there been?
Well, they've had widespread international condemnation, but really this is the main things to hit on are capital flight and brain drain. Academics are running away from Turkey, and the secular Turks who really oppose Erdogan's rule are pulling their money out of Turkey, and Turkey depends on those capital payments that they get from kind of those wealthier Turkish members. Their lira is going to fall. This is going to have tremendous effects on their economy, which I think is one of the reasons why he's stirring up so much nationalism, to try and offset that.
So we're talking about what's happening in the immediate few months with Erdogan's moves. Long term, what does this mean for Turkey?
Long term, we see Turkey, a country that was almost an EU nation, as you said, they're going to reinstate the death penalty most likely. They're going to really start cracking down on dissent, and we're going to see a Turkey that aligns itself more with Middle Eastern interests and less with European interests. That may affect our relationship with NATO, and it may affect Turkey's kind of cooperation in international courts. But by no means is this the same Turkey that almost joined the European Union.
Elijah, thank you for joining us. And I do want to mention, we just learned that all social media in Turkey has been shut down right now. We'll be right back.
There's live video
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. You're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Yeah, I saw that coming. That will throw you off track. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Taking care of a family member can lead to plenty of questions. Fortunately, there's a place to get the answers, for them and for you. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
Next week is Veterans Day. I'm sure almost everyone watching this has some connection to our military. Maybe our parents served, maybe it was our grandparents, maybe we just grew up in a military area. One way or another, I'd imagine most of us feel some sort of connection there. It's indeed a special day when we thank those who fight for us and reflect on what their sacrifice means. That's why I'm a little disturbed by what I see in the public sphere regarding our veterans. I'm worried that as a country we're in a stage of what I call performance patriotism. It seems like we only pay attention to veterans issues when it's a symbolic cause that we can show off about. I'll give you an example. Earlier this year, 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick, along with other NFL players, knelt during the playing of the national anthem as an act of protest. What I saw on social media after that was a lot of outrage. People said Kaepernick was ungrateful. They said he was disrespecting veterans who bled and died for the flag. Conservative commentator Tomi Lahren devoted one of her signature commentaries to attacking Kaepernick for his protest. A few weeks later, California attempted to force National Guard soldiers, many of whom saw combat, some of whom were wounded, to repay bonuses that they had been promised in exchange for re-enlisting. This was reported in the media, and thankfully the Pentagon eventually stopped the bonus clawback attempt. But the outrage on social media when compared with Kaepernick wasn't even close. Of the people I saw criticizing Kaepernick, I saw almost zero outrage over this attempt. Nobody said California was disrespecting people who fought, nobody said they were ungrateful, and Ms. Lahren was noticeably silent. This is a microcosm of how I fear we view our veterans right now. We use them as a symbol at best and a political football at worst. We love to have the flag unfurled on the field before an NFL game and cheer as the Jets fly overhead. We love to all stand for the patriotic songs and cheer veterans as they're honored on the field. But we are virtually silent about the fact that many veterans have come back from war to a home they no longer recognize, and more Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans have committed suicide after coming home than were killed overseas. Caring for our veterans when they come home from war is not just a policy debate, it's a moral covenant. Supporting those who protected us is one of our most sacred obligations. The way we fulfill that obligation is not by criticizing people who disrespect the flag by tweeting nebulous messages about troops. That's not nearly enough. We have to speak up when the actual well-being of our fighting men and women is threatened, and not just when the rising tide of outrage makes speaking up a popular thing to do. That's all the time we have for tonight. Thanks for watching. We won't be on next week, but make sure to check out our webisodes breaking down all the election results. And don't forget, next Tuesday is election night, and CitrusTV will have live coverage starting at 8:30 p.m., lasting until midnight. Make sure to tune in. For Talking Points, I'm Alex Amico. Good night, Syracuse.